All right. Hello, everybody.
Thanks for joining today's Project Lemonade. We're going to give a couple of seconds here for people to jump into the meeting. Hope everybody's having a decent day. It's been raining in Philadelphia and storming. But other than that, so we'll give it a few more seconds and then we'll get started.
All right.
And while people are coming in, I'm in Philadelphia. Spencer's in our New York offices. The beauty
Hello,
of the Zoom
everybody.
meeting.
I feel like I sort of live in a screen these days.
Yeah. But you look good, Spencer. There you go.
I appreciate it.
Yep.
Okay,
so I think I'm going to start. Hello, my name is Wayne Cosolino from Digital Transitions Cultural Heritage. I'm part of the sales team. We thank you guys again for being a part of Project Lemonade. We've been doing this now for going on roughly 3 months. And we've just appreciated everybody who's been coming on to kind of take a look at information that we've been providing, as well as just great feedback that we're getting from you guys. So on the side, on our chat, we have Kate Stone, our events manager, and one of our tech specialists, Arnab, who will be fielding questions. If you've been here before, welcome back. If this is your first time, fantastic. This is Project Lemonade. If you have wanted to see our past webinars, Kate will be posting a link on how to get to those. And if you want to be able to revisit those, there's the link. Great. And so I wanted to just say today we will be talking about the new iXH 150 megapixel camera with the new 72 millimeter Mark II lens. And we're just going to jump right into it. Spencer, have at it, brother. Enjoy and take over. See y'all later.
All right. Thank you very much, Wayne. Yeah, like Wayne said, we're going to keep it pretty casual today. No slide deck, anything like that. Just kind of get people an idea of the camera. It's pretty simple, but pretty powerful. So we're just going to kind of jump into it, and let me just switch my camera here to. All right. So here we have the new Phase 1 iXH 150 megapixel camera. For anybody who is not familiar with the platform, the iX platform from Phase 1 is modeled around the industrial camera line. So it's not going to be, it's not going to be similar to something like a DSLR, something with a mirror box. It's mirrorless camera, and it is kind of completely designed, one, for cultural heritage imaging, and two, with that comes, it's designed to be completely designed to be photographed top down. So everything here is kind of built for a reason, let's say. The first thing we can kind of take a look at is the body itself. I'm just going to go ahead and pop the lens panel off. A couple latches here on the body, and I can pull the lens off. We'll get to the lens in a moment. But the iX body here is a complete unibody design. What we can see too is that the focus mechanism is actually here, the body is not extruded at the moment, but this focus is sort of like a rail camera or a view camera, in that the body extrudes in and out to focus farther or closer, respectively. And then in here is where the sensor is going to live, deep into the body there, and communication pins, etc. So you can see that for those of you who have maybe seen the iXG or are owners of the iXG, Phase 1 has made the decision to take away the LCD panel. Great idea. The camera is largely going to be higher than your eyes anyways when it's up on a copy stand, or maybe off on a boom or something like that. So there's no real reason to access any LCD, no reason for that to be there. And instead, you're going to completely be controlling the camera from Capture One. This is fully 100% integrated into Capture One for sort of hands off of the camera experience. Another really nice thing you can see here, you may have seen this like on a hard drive, like a pretty big hard drive or something like that, heat sinks built into the camera. This basically is just going to allow for better heat dissipation from the body. It really doesn't get all that warm, but still it's a really great touch here for anybody who's used the 150. The IQ4 150, that one does get a little bit warmer, but the heat sinks on the iX platform actually really do a good job of dissipating that heat. And then on the back here, we've upgraded to USB-C connection right here on the left. Same power as before, these LEMO connectors. This is your power for that iXH. And then there's two ports for other LEMO accessories like a foot pedal or a strobe, something like that. Okay, so before I mount the lens, let's go ahead and pop this in here and see if it darkens up just a little bit. No, that's okay. All right, so here we have the new, completely redesigned 72 millimeter Mark II lens. This is probably the most exciting thing for me in the iXH platform, is this brand new redesigned lens. This is something that a lot of R&D has gone into this gone into the manufacturing of this lens and the design of this lens. And what you really take away from it is something that is truly finely built for cultural heritage imaging applications. It's designed to be, 72 millimeters on medium format is going to be just ever so slightly wider than, sort of like a standard 50 millimeter on a small format camera, or, normal field of view. But then the sort of main benefit from this redesign is that it integrates a floating element that is firmware controlled inside the lens cell. What a floating element is it is a group of lens cells, of lens elements that move independently from the rest of the cells. And what those really end up being very beneficial for is for photographing close up, or at sort of higher magnification ranges. So the iXH 150 will focus, all the way, from infinity down to roughly about a 6 or 7 inch field of view, which equates to about 2000 PPI. And because of that floating element, And we don't need, we don't need any sort of, extension tubes, or we don't need to sort of compensate for anything there, because all the compensation is built into the lens. The camera and the software are all talking to one another. And when the lens is focused out to a specific focus position, the iXH controls that floating element inside to compensate for any chromatic aberration you might experience on a non-floating element lens at those close-up focusing distances. So what it also is going to then really control your edge-to-edge sharpness, both the sort of top, bottom, left, and right edges, and also in the corners too. This is very different from any of the lenses that Phase One's designed, either for the DSLRs or the iX platform previously. This is quite unique, and very, very excited about it. To give you an idea of what it kind of looks like, here we have the 72, of course, front and rear elements there, element groups, I should say. And then right here, we have the previous model, 72. This lens has been sort of a workhorse in our community for anybody really doing cultural heritage digitization with any of the Phase One systems or anything from DT. You'll know that the 72 has largely been that normal focal length, the Schneider Digitar 72, and we can see that there's a big size difference here.
Spencer?
Yep.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Is there any chance you could speak up a little bit?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. So the 72 here, this is sort of the previous model, and this was a great lens, up to, let's say, 100 megapixels or so. But as we increase the megapixels in the camera, the sensor's not getting any bigger. The pixels are getting smaller, right? So the resolving power of a lens, starts to get stressed as the megapixels go up. And the 72 is absolutely designed for the 150 megapixel sensor. It really does shine at 150, and it's going to look better and better and better as resolution goes down, which is to say that the 72 millimeter Mark II lens is backwards compatible to the iXG 100 megapixel camera. For anybody who's currently a user on that platform, this is accepted onto the iXG. You just need a simple firmware update, which is the fantastic thing about the Phase One platform and the iX platform as well. So yeah, completely different optical design here. All right, so then we can go ahead and mount these up. And lock those down. All right, and there we go. Perfect. So I'm going to swap over and go ahead and mount this onto the copy stand. Got some polls going here. So let's see. Are there any questions, Arnaud, while I'm doing this that have popped up that I could maybe answer?
Let me take a look here. So there are a few questions that folks had about like sales and like trade up policies and things. Those are going to be for your sales reps. I've made a note of the folks that are asking, and I'll make sure that that somebody contacts you about that. Question though, can you use the 120 millimeter macro lens from the iXG on the iXH? And just kind of to add on to that, could you use the 72 Mark II on the iXG, like backwards compatibly?
Let's see here. Okay. The 120, the 120 macro for the iXG, that's still going to be the macro lens for the iXH platform. That lens didn't get a redesign, but it holds up very, very well on this platform. So the 120, that's the 120 aspheric. That's going to be your macro lens for both platforms, and it is immediately compatible. And then, could you ask the question again about the 72? Just phrase that again.
Yeah, is the 72 millimeter lens backwards compatible with the iXG?
That is a good question. Off the top of my head, I want to say that at the moment it's not compatible on this platform. I don't know if that's going to be addressed in any sort of firmware update.
I actually just got I just got to chime in from the R&D and support team. So it will be compatible with a firmware upgrade. So that will be released shortly, but it is going to be compatible with the platform. So that's a good question. Have you used the 72 millimeter lens with the iXG extension tubes at all? Have you tested if that works?
No, currently there isn't a firmware version that supports the extension tubes with the 72 Mark II. Though I would say if I was going to go any closer than, what the 72 Mark II can resolve, I'd rather move then over to the 120, because it's just, we're talking about different lenses at that point, and I think much smaller fields of view.
Understood.
Yeah, I would kind of move over to a dedicated macro lens once I go over there.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So there was a question, you mentioned chromatic aberration, I believe, when you were talking about the floating element, but could you restate that, kind of what that is, how we mitigate that?
Right. So, if we don't have a floating element in the lens design, and we start to focus, at higher magnification ratios, focus, as close as maybe the lens is designed to, if there's not a floating element in there, you could certainly run into things like, errors like chromatic aberration. The lens is just like not really designed to bend the light in that way. The floating element compensates for any given focus position so that you have optimal sharpness and sort of luminance uniformity across the image circle, because that floating element is going to move and sort of collect the light differently depending on how the camera is being focused. So the 72 Mark II, of course, like I said, does have that element, and it's going to compensate very well for that.
Perfect. Last question here. So this is kind of more integrating into the DT system with the the Versa, the Atom, and any of our other benches that have the AutoColumn and the Auto PPI feature. Have they added an option so that if you arbitrarily set the height, it records the PPI based on the focus distance? I believe it does, because the PPI only has to do with the focus distance. And then where that plane of focus is dependent on where the height of the column is, but it tracks it with the focus, right?
Yeah. Okay. So if you arbitrarily set the height to maximize the resolution on an object, it could record the PPI. So is this more like a like a metadata tag or something that's actually recording the capture resolution by the camera rather than having to tag it on output manually.
Yeah, Kurt.
Am I reading that? I feel like I'm reading that question like that.
Yeah, Kurt, if you want to just kind of, give us a little more detail. Okay, here we go. So as far as I know, it was not a feature in Capture One or Capture One CH where you move the column and refocus. Capture One. So it's a metadata thing. Yeah.
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 Yeah. That, I know we've gotten a lot of requests for that one, and it would be certainly helpful because that is, if we look at the camera information in Capture One, I'm going to hook up while I'm kind of talking, hook up the camera. But when we look at Capture One and the information that's displayed by the camera, that's all there. There's certainly a lot of data that relates to the focus position. So hopefully, we can push for that. I know I'd certainly like to see it, and I think it'd be very useful. But currently we just don't have anything available to do that right now.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. So I think that's the last question for now. Do you want to get into some actual use cases and kind of show us some more?
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to go ahead and show. Let's go over to, well, just because we sort of talked about the lens quite a bit, I'm going to go ahead and show this graph from Golden Thread. Okay. So for anybody who's a Golden Thread user or OpenDice user, these would certainly be familiar to you. They're SFR charts, sampling efficiency charts for the 72 Mark II. So these were shot what these were photographed of, and it didn't show up in the image. Let's see. Was your standard dice target. I don't seem to have the actual image of it in the report. Hold on. There it is. This is our dice target, right? This is the Golden Thread object level target. Shot at 400 PPI with the 72 Mark II. And the great thing about this is that we don't have any sharpening on this file. The sharpening amount in Capture One was set to 0, which is really, really fantastic. We don't really even have to think about what I sometimes refer to as, when I'm doing trainings, as input sharpening for the lens, to kind of squeak the SFR curve into compliance. We actually don't need any of that. And so we have over 100% sampling efficiency here, which is really just saying the camera is resolving more detail at 400 pixels per inch than 400 itself. So it's actually resolving detail down to about 460 PPI on average. And then here, let's go to the luminance, which is the one that Golden Thread is in, and Fagi are really looking at. We have that really nice straight line for both the horizontal and the vertical axis. Each of these lines are, the center or top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right regions on the target. And what we want to see, right, is them all kind of falling on top of each other, meaning that the camera is square and that it is, homogeneously sharp across the image plane. So this was really fantastic, for us to see that we didn't have to use any sort of input sharpening or digital sharpening through Capture One to get this to pass through. This was a Fagi 3 target, but Fagi 4, the corridors would be just a touch tighter, somewhere around here and here. And we can see that the line would in fact pass through that. So really just kind of great results here, showing that the lens is just even and sharp and does what it is supposed to do. So yeah, okay. So here in Capture One, we can kind of look at a couple examples from the iXH 150 and the 72 Mark II. So first, let's see. Let's just get rid of this. First example, let's look at some large objects, right? This is where this is really gonna shine, is in these oversized objects. This was about 350 pixels per inch. Here we are, use that capture resolution ruler. Yep, about 360. So this is a pretty large map. Let's look at our crop tool. Yeah, so this is 30 by 40 at 360 PPI. And not a lot of tooth on this paper or anything to kind of look at, but we do have really nice sort of sharp lines and these really fine latitude and longitude lines throughout the center, and then all the way out to the very far corners. We still have this sharp line. It may, this may be a little bit blurry on your screen, but we do have these, we will have these available for download for folks just through the website if you want to inspect them yourself. But along the top, still nice and sharp throughout the top and the corner. If you can see that we even have from the backing material, actually the copy stand platform here, sharp on this pebbling here, if it's maybe harder to see the sharpness of the paper. And then down here as well. So really from corner to corner, really quite good. Very happy with how this is turning out for these larger objects. So that's kind of at the longer range for the lens. If we then go ahead and look a bit closer, let's see, measure this real quick. This is much closer. This is about the maximum resolution for the lens. The maximum focus position or closest focus position is going to be a little over 2000 PPI, like around 2050 or so. And what I really like about this is that this is this postcard here, but you can really make out the offset pattern quite well, at 100%. Really nice and sharp through the corners. Picking up these really fine little fibers in the postcard. And again, it's sharp, sure, it's a little bit of like a pixel peeping thing, but the thing to really take away from this is homogeneous sharpness across the plane. That's what that floating element that's being controlled by the camera is going to do for us. And even at, 200, it gets a little pixely, but, you can really make out and kind of do a rough, process ID on this postcard just through, your sort of high res capture from Capture One. Flipping that over to the back, We can get a little bit more information from that, but you know, the paper has a bit more of a tooth than that map does, so a little bit more visually stimulating, but lots of great information here. You know, with the manuscript on the letter. And then, you know, the really nice thing here is that, you know, we can photograph, you know, 5x7 piece of film. You know, this is a glass plate, but at 2000 PPI, we can fill the frame and capture in a single shot 5x7 film, which is your sort of benchmark for, you know, for FAGI 4, for anything larger than 4x5. That's, you know, your sort of guideline there is to photograph those at 2000 pixels per inch. And to be able to do that in a single shot now with the iXH 150 megapixel sensor, you kind of marry that with the 72 Mark II, it's really quite fantastic. I'm extremely happy with how this is looking. I've photographed my own film with this as well, my own 4x5, and it's just really nice to look at and get a good rendering of the grain. Let's see if we can go up to one of these like thinner areas in the negative. Yeah, or, you know, it is perhaps, it will be hard to see. Again, we'll make these available for download, but you know, even at that high magnification ratio, we get really nice grain rendition. So really good for being 2000 pixels per inch, right? We could definitely go higher than this and get a little bit more info out of it, but we have really nice smooth grain structure in this film, at the benefit of being able to do it in a single shot. That's, you know, a big takeaway from this. Here we can see where the emulsions flaked away. But yeah, let's see. Another example. This is another slightly smaller, but closely sized glass plate negative. And zoom in here just a little bit more. So yeah, again, this one's a bit grainier, so it might be a little easier to see. But to be able to do that sort of single shot approach to larger format, larger than 4x5 format film, big benefit here. This is sort of worlds away from the 72 millimeter Mark I. You know, even with some extension tubes on that, it is a completely different design. So yeah, and then what else do we have? Some color as well. One of the things that I did notice, having photographed with this lens and extensively with the old 72, is that I've noticed that we have much better contrast through the tonal range in the 72 millimeter Mark II. So I tended to notice that the 72 Mark I was maybe sometimes looked a little too contrasty as far as like how sort of the blacks rendered specifically. And I think I noticed it more in the reflective work, but not sort of your, you know, pixel level contrast, but overall the tonality of the image tends to be a bit more true at capture and required less fussing with some curves in the lower end to kind of prevent, you know, the blacks from looking too black. So this is a very, very fine grained film. So a lot harder to see than the others, but still to do, 4x5 film at 2000 PPI with a single shot. Not quite a FADGI 4, but makes doing a 2-shot stitch to get a higher resolution image much less of a pain, especially with having that really nice sharpness across the whole field of view. You're really gonna benefit from like a higher, very likely, when you have sharpness across that whole image plane, you're going to introduce a lot less errors when you go to stitch in Photoshop or any other program. So yeah, let's see, let's go back, let's see if there's any questions. I'll stop sharing my screen for now. Okay.
Can you hear me, Spencer?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I can pop up a couple of them here. So the first is, how close can you get with the 72mm lens in terms of like minimum focus distance?
Yeah. So it's about 7.25 inches on the long side of the sensor. So very, like maybe 5.25 by 7.25.
Got it.
Lines.
And so do you know what PPI that comes out to at the like maximum if you rack it all the way out?
Yeah. So I'll just do that right now just to get the sort of exact number. So it's 2029 pixels per inch is the maximum resolution. So if we take that and divide it, we'll divide the sensor resolution by that, 7.2, like I mentioned, about 7.25. And that was kind of apparent in that 5x7 in the single shot. There's just a little bit of space on the left and right there.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Next question. So do we have a side-by-side comparison? I think in Rachel's article that she did, was there a side-by-side with the old 72?
I don't know about the side-by-side, but I may have something on this machine that I could dig for, but that should be something that we should publish probably instead.
Yeah.
Just to give a better idea of that.
If you want to look for it, there are actually a few questions here that I can probably take. So Dominique asked, how is the sensor cleaning on the iXG or the iXH with the cavity of the body? That's a great question. There are dedicated cleaning swabs for the iXG and H that have handles that can reach in there. We also do like a dedicated deep cleaning where we can, remove that unit. So, if you're concerned about doing it yourself, we're happy to kind of help out and do that for you. It is kind of like cleaning a DSLR where it has a deeper mirror box, but it certainly can be done. And most of the time you just need to do kind of like a dust off with like a rocket blower or a bottle blower or something. But it's absolutely possible.
Yeah. The only thing on this machine currently is nothing was done with an the iXG 72mm model. So and we would also kind of have to wait for firmware for that to be supported on the iXH body. But as far as like the 100 with the 72 versus the iXH 150 with the 72, those we should dig those up and get those up online.
Actually, I think Dominique is saying that they are included in the link in that article that Rachel did. So I will post that in the chat in just a moment. Okay, we have a question about, do we have tools for multi-shots if we need to do ultra high res from a large slide? I mean, the answer to that, just kind of right off the bat, is it's not a multi-shot back in the traditional like sense that some of these other manufacturers do, where they do like pixel shifts. You really don't need to do that, and that's often not reliable in terms of dealing with vibration. If you haven't tried it in person, I would highly recommend doing that, because it's a little bit more difficult than it sounds in theory. But we do have, we have stitching tools that work, what is it? Our batch stitch script that works really, really well with the, any files, right? So, that's always going to be an option with any of these cameras. But again, I mean, part of the idea is, when you have a sensor with this kind of resolution and you have a lens with this kind of resolving power, you don't want to have to stitch if you can avoid it, right? You're always going to lose image quality when you're doing these computational things. So if you can do it optically with this kind of sensor and this kind of lens, that's the way to go, right, Spencer?
Yeah, exactly. And I think to that point, sure, you don't want to stitch if you don't have to, but I would say, like, to go even further with film, I'd rather say I don't want to do a multi-shot at high resolution if I don't have to, because you're introducing a lot of error there. If the sensor's ever so slightly vibrating from the AC unit is kind of blasting, and there's high frequency vibration kind of traveling up the copy stand into the camera at high res, right? That could certainly introduce errors in that pixel shifting mechanism. So to instead, like Arnab is saying, to do it optically and stitch in sections with a single shot, that's going to be much more reliable, so long as the optics are good, right?
Questions? I think we've kind of hit most of the non-sales ones.
Yeah.
One of the things that I do want to kind of bring up, and this is just something that we're really proud of personally as DT, is we've worked with Phase One very closely to build not just the iXH but the iXG, and we really kind of solidified that partnership with the iXH. So any iXH logo that comes to production, you're going to get it from DT. We're the sole North American distributors that has our logo on it. We're really proud to have worked as closely as we have with Phase One to create this awesome camera.
So I think. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I mean, and again, if you're interested in testing the camera, we do have some demo units that are likely available. That it may take some time for us to be able to ship them, given the current situation and supply. But we're absolutely looking for people to field test these. So,
right. So I'm gonna kind of jump over and just kind of walk through just a little bit of the functionality in Capture One. For anybody who hasn't seen the iX platform before, just kind of always good to take a look at what does that look like in the software that that it's meant to be integrated with. So here we are in Capture One Cultural Heritage Edition. The iX platform does tether to Capture One Pro, but you have very limited functionality. It's really not going to look quite the same when you start interacting with the camera. Obviously, you'll still have the actual camera tool where you can control shutter speed, aperture, etc. But when you go to focus the camera, the sort of integration is going to be a bit different. And if you're using something like the DT AutoColumn systems, the DT Atom, the DT Versa, the DT Titan. That copy stand also integrates with Capture One Cultural Heritage, so that you're going to have, a bit more, actually much more smooth experience than just working in the Pro version. So here's that copy stand tool that I've that I was showing. Let's see here. If I want to go then to the camera, obviously I've got control over ISO, shutter speed, aperture, etc. But in live view, this is kind of where, the camera really is doing a lot of the heavy lifting, and how it integrates into Capture One. So for instance, you'll see that, well, in the Pro version, you would only see this near and far dialogue. That's all you get. You just get to autofocus the lens, focus it near or far, and then that's kind of it. In Cultural Heritage, we have the added benefit of true PPI, which can both give us plenty of information and a multitude of information to work with, and also will automatically move the camera, because Capture One Cultural Heritage is integrating with the copy stand. So the column will move the camera to the correct position that would sort of match up with your target resolution. And then the iXH and iXG are both going to move the lens to the correct focus position, so that it's properly sharp and in focus at your target resolution. So right now the image is out of focus. It's because the lens is currently focused out to 2000 PPI. The great sort of thing about this tool, though, is that we can get our current field of view. This is in centimeters. For those of us working in Imperial, we can do that as well, right? 7 inches by 5 inches. The focus distance from the object would be 17.5 roughly inches. You can get information about your magnification ratio and a little overview here. So these are all really great if you're wondering, if I move this to 1000 PPI, you can just flip over and it'll tell you exactly, without having to measure, what is your field of view, or what is my magnification ratio. What's a bit more practical, and really for most folks who are doing something like a FADGI compliant imaging, where you're sort of imaging at 3 or 4 or 600 PPI, we can just punch that in to Capture One, set a focus position, and then type that in and hit start. So I keep live view kind of small here, just because I'm on this iMac and really eats up a lot of bandwidth, this screen. But once Capture One and the camera sort of realize what resolution they were at, which was 650 PPI. See, I've disconnected it and reconnected it too many times during the webinar. I'm just gonna do your classic, turn it off, turn it back on again. All right. All this disconnecting, reconnecting the lens, etc. All right. Perfect. So now it's telling us that we're at 600 PPI. All right. So there we go. And I'll make this a little bigger, but you know, the one thing I do want to kind of show, and this is you know a great way to illustrate it, is that the plane of focus for the 72, you know, as we've talked about already, you know, I've said it many times, the plane of focus is extremely, extremely flat. You know, that's what we want out of a cultural heritage optical system, because what we're going to see is we don't sort of see the classic focus bowl that you might expect, where the plane of focus kind of lifts up in the corners or around the edges, as you might see on like a lens that's made for photographing people or landscapes or anything like that. You can see here that, you know, we're sharp in the center. Just to give you an idea, there's our dice target. And then as we move all the way out to the edge of the frame, this is the, you know, tinted dollar bill. And from, you know, my vantage point, let me just measure it. That's an 1.5 inches, maybe 1.75 inches tall, but it's sharp where the dollar bill is meeting the copy stand platform. So the fact that we don't see that lift, that's a good thing. That's what we want, because if, for instance, we had an object that did nearly fill this entire frame, we don't want any part of the image that's out towards the edge here or towards the edge here. You can see how sharp and square this is all the way out in the extreme corners, right? We have really nice detail there. And then same thing on this side. So we want that homogeneous focus across the field of view. Same thing here, right? We're pretty blurry up at the top where it's tinted. That's a good thing. We don't want it to be sharp up there. That means there would be that focus bowling effect. So, all right. So that's kind of all I have for here. I'm just gonna go back to our main page. Turn the lights on. Okay. Okay. Yeah, so I guess I'll just finish up answering kind of like any other questions that might be there. And then we'll kind of call it a day for the iXH overview. Okay, does the iXH have various file formats that the iQ4 has? So we don't have the extended, like the iIQL extended option. We have your sort of classic iIQL, iIQS formats for the iXH. So just your sort of standard lossless, high resolution 16-bit raw file. Let's see, other questions here. Okay. I think, let's see. Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, okay, can you show the dice results? Yes, Martina, definitely. Okay, here we go. So there's again that SFR. Here was the delta E values.
Sharing your screen.
Yeah, thank you. I just, I may live in the studio, but sometimes it feels like my brain isn't quite with me. Okay. So there we go. First off, we'll look at we'll look at the delta E values. So again, I mentioned this was a FAGI3 target test parameter, I should say, but we are still underneath and within the FAGI4 limits here, being 6 as a maximum and an average of 3. It's usually what we go by for the max at least, but an average of 3. Under 3 is good. We're at 2.2 for your average delta E values. I mentioned that I felt that it was, visually had better contrast and better rendition of those darker areas. And, we had definitely lower delta E than I've previously seen in some of those darker patches. So here we go. There's your tone scale, well, your OECF curve. It was for Adobe RGB space, so it's a gamma of 2.2. We don't really see too much going on. Everything is falling on top of each other. Shows it has good white balance. No chromatic errors, things like that. Let's see. Here's your tone scale. Good uniformity. A lot of that is your actually, your illumination on the copy stand or how you're lighting that target. But, there's also not, there's a lot less vignetting on this lens than the previous 72. So, you do see a little bit less, lower, like a peak difference there than maybe you might see with the older model. Let me see. Not exciting. Registration error. Actually, well, really exciting if you're interested in that kind of stuff. But single shot camera, right? You're not going to see tons of pixel registration errors here. Those are very, very low. Okay, and then as far as the sharpness goes, again, sampling frequency it was over 400 pixels per inch, which was the sampling frequency. That's how many pixels fell across an inch of the sensor. However, the optical resolution was higher than that, just due to the resolving power of the 72 millimeter Mark II. And depending on your capture resolution and your lens, this is not just something you'd see in the 72, although this high is probably unique to the 72 Mark II, but other lenses as well, like the 120 aspheric. If you're able to pull back and shoot that at 400 ppi, you're going to see probably over 100% sampling efficiency there. That one's very, very sharp, especially at those low resolutions. Graph of your SFR summary. I'd rather kind of look at it here. And your RGB and your luminance, right? And the thing we're looking for is that really nice straight line. That is the big takeaway. It's dead flat. It's just exactly what you want to see out of a lens. No sort of big humps up here, or it doesn't dip down. A hump kind of like going up this way, or passing to the right of this line is going to show over sharpening, and then dipping below this line, that's under sharpened. Passing from one and meeting at the Nyquist frequency would be, up, sort of like if it existed in a vacuum perfect lens. This is showing that it's actually just resolving, more detail than the sampling frequency was showing. And then your noise levels, very classic, phase one sensor noise levels, very, very, very low, which is not unexpected here. All right. Yes, the uniformity value was with the LCC applied. Yes. Though at 400 PPI, that dice target is pretty small relative to the field of view anyways. So as long as the lighting was good, I wouldn't expect to see too high of a deviation, because it was very likely this target was placed in the center anyways. So you'd probably see a little bit larger of a difference if the LCC was not applied. Cool. All right. Sounds good. Okay. For the SFR, are only the corners in the target, or are also the lossy ones measured? Let's see. Martina, could you sort of expand on that question?
Hey, Spencer.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we were talking about it in the chat, and I think that for like a more detailed analysis, we're happy to distribute that PDF to anybody that's on the call, and we can discuss that with you individually afterwards.
Okay, cool. Well, then I guess, let's see. Do we have a trade-up policy for iXG owners? That's the last question I see in the question area. Yes, we definitely have a trade-in policy for iXG users. There are also a lot of folks who perhaps your PO was arranged to where you've purchased the iXH already, but we're given an iXG, or sort of we're given the option to do that upgrade cost. It's sort of really dependent on how the sales folks put together that order.
Spencer, let me jump in here real quick, from the sales perspective.
Yeah.
Just reach out to the salesperson you've been working with on that question.
Perfect. Yeah. Simple as that. Okay. Great. So I guess, let's see. Well, there's only one other one that maybe I see in here. Will there be an upgrade plan for us using the 72 from the 100? Okay, yeah, we answered that. Okay. All right.
So I'm not sure if there are any more questions. If there aren't, that's great. Thank you guys, everybody, for showing up, and appreciate all your questions. You can always reach out to us at info@digitaltransitions.com if you have any more questions. Yeah, and thank you, everybody, for another successful Project Lemonade. So, well, let everybody say goodbye, and thank you all, and see you on the next one.